Our chief foreign affairs correspondent, Richard Engel, has covered attacks like this, groups like this for many years. He is part of our team of coverage on this story tonight. Richard, good evening.
Dressed in black, masked, determined, cradling their weapons, the gunmen look like seasoned veterans who stepped right off the battlefields of Iraq, Syria, or Yemen. Or at the very least, are mimicking the propaganda videos of militant groups to a T. Al-Qaeda and ISIS both place a growing value on propaganda, not just as advertising, but to turn their supporters into deadly weapons. Both groups publish slick, competing online magazines in English. Both have been telling would-be recruits not to come to the front lines in the Middle East anymore, but to stay at home and attack civilian targets. Al-Qaeda's branch in Yemen, the same group that killed an American reporter last month, specifically marked the editor of Charlie Hebdo for death in 2013. His magazine has infuriated Islamic militants and even some moderates for printing anti-Islamic material repeatedly. Al-Qaeda in Yemen said it would make the magazine pay for it. Also on its hit list, other activists who've criticized radical Islam, including longtime target Salman Rushdie. In a statement today, he said, "I stand with Charlie Hebdo, as we all must, to defend the art of satire, which has always been a force for liberty and against tyranny, dishonesty, and stupidity." There has been a spate of recent attacks. The gunman in Canada, the man with an axe in New York, the attack on a cafe in Sydney, all inspired, authorities say, by Islamic militants to take matters into their own hands.
The more innocents who are killed in these attacks, the greater the impetus is for others to carry out similar attacks.
This time, targeting a magazine which radicals considered an affront to their intolerant ideology.
And Brian, at least one of those three suspects, one of the two brothers, was a well-known Islamic radical who had actually been convicted in 2008 on terrorism charges. Brian?
Richard Engel, part of our coverage of this story tonight. Richard, thanks. And we want to bring in Michael Leiter, former director of the National Counterterrorism Center under both presidents Obama and Bush. He is these days the executive vice president of Leidos, which does national security work for the federal government. Michael, now that you're in the private sector, what did your government experience tell you? What was your first thought upon hearing this news today? And anything about it indicate we could be in for more?
Well, I think from what we saw, these guys were pretty sophisticated, Brian. This wasn't the run-of-the-mill, homegrown, where they just do one stupid thing with an axe. They were organized, they knew their target, they knew how to get away for a period. And that's a level of sophistication we haven't seen. I think what is most telling here is really how vulnerable these soft targets are to these sorts of attacks. And whether we'll see more, I think success, unfortunately, breeds success. And right now, the Al-Qaeda message, wherever it's coming from, Syria or Yemen, is gaining traction in many nations, including in France.
So safe to be on alert a little bit higher degree here in the United States?
I think so. I think we're going to see elevated levels of security in cities like New York, Washington, Los Angeles, and that's appropriate because other people who are on the edge see this success and say, I can be like that too. And organizations like ISIS in Syria understand how to use social media and motivate and drive these people towards mobilizing and making these sorts of attacks.
Michael Leiter, thank you for being with us here in our Washington bureau.